good. If you want to come back.
Yep, sorry.
No worries. So that's what I was saying, like, let the beauty of this place inspire you guys. Like, it's such a gift to be able to be out here by the ocean. It's like a sweet spot. So let the beauty of this place inspire you guys to become even more in love with nature. That's the thing I like to do as a ranger. So, but before I begin to talk about an ecosystem or the environment, I always like to pause and introduce a little bit of an idea about the economy, right? Because oftentimes people that feel about this way or that way, these can be two opposing ideas. People that are worried about the economy or the environment. Have you guys heard of a study that came out in 1972 called The Limits to Growth? Have you heard of this, April?
I have heard of it.
Yeah, so in 1972, a group of scientists from MIT got together and they said, okay, the goal of business is to infinitely grow our economies. Can we infinitely grow our economies? Like, this is something we're still trying to do today without destroying the earth. Someone brought this up earlier, over exploitation of planetary resources. That was what this whole study was about. And they said in 1972, this was published by MIT, they said, we can, if we adapt certain sorts of sustainable technologies. So 50 years later, so when the study was first introduced in the 70s, people were like, either loved it or hated it, right? Kind of like things go today. Some people thought about it. 30 years later, they were looking at it saying, this looks interesting. 50 years later, they did a follow-up on the limits to growth. And you can find this on KPMG. I don't know if you guys have heard of KPMG. It's one of the big four accounting firms. I can airdrop this to you if you're interested. The follow-up was published in the Yale Journal of Industrial Ecology. I have it on my phone. I've airdropped it to a few people while they're here. So 50 years afterwards, what they did was they went back and they looked at limits to growth, and they found that the predictions made in 1972 are precisely on track to happen in the next decade or so, because we have not adapted. We have not made changes. Technology is improving dramatically with electric vehicles and solar panels, but it needed to improve at a much faster rate. And humans are going along with the business as usual model, which they forecasted the business as usual model is what will cause a collapse. So the predictions were pretty grim. Industrial collapse in the 2030s to 2040s, agricultural collapse after that, and population collapse after that. Very grim outlook, but there's still time to make a change, and changes are happening. But I like to bring this up because the idea of the ecosystem and the economy being interdependent and needing each other, we can't produce enough industrial goods if we don't have enough fresh water for industrial output. We can't grow enough crops for 8 or 10 billion people if we don't have enough fresh water, right? So something good to think about, something good to look into. So now I'm going to shift gears, talk about what's happening now, but I want to talk about the ocean and the land. And then I'm going to offer you guys some ideas for solutions. So first thing is, in the ocean, April already brought this up. We have pictures of the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. And there's a couple things I want to say before I go any further. So the ideas that I'm introducing to you guys today, write this down, they are not cyclical. Put this in your mind, they are not cyclical. But what I mean by that is that none of this stuff has ever happened before in the history of the earth, right? So when environmental topics come up, people often say, yes, the earth goes through cycles of warming and cooling and ocean levels and this and that. These are patterns, these are cycles, it's nothing to worry about. There are patterns that the earth goes through. Most of those patterns are marked by mass extinction events. True, good to know that. So you can point that out to people if they want to say that, but I'm not introducing any cyclical ideas today. That's a different conversation, but I'm introducing things that have not happened before. So never in the history of the earth has there been thousands of miles of plastic floating in the ocean. Why is this important? 70% of the earth is covered by oceans. 70% of the oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. Phytoplankton and algae produces oxygen. We see a tiny portion of plastic on top of the ocean, but as it degrades and sinks down, it creates what they call a plastic smog. This plastic smog creates major problems in the ecosystem out there, potentially not allowing the ocean to produce oxygen for us. So we already talked about this. I mentioned this during my talk. You feel good when you get your plastic bottle and you put it in the blue can. You recycle the bottle that says recyclable into the blue recycling can. What percentage of that is actually recycled? We already talked about this earlier. I found the numbers of around 5%. Most of it is shipped to countries that can't handle the load, and it gets dumped into the ocean just because it's overflowing or burned. So this plastic is a major problem, and I'm talking about plastic bottles. They said every toothbrush made in the last 130 years on this planet still exists. Doritos bags, plastic bags. I mean, it's incredible. I walk on the beach down here after work every night with my dogs, and every day at high tide, pieces of plastic, styrofoam, every day at high tide washing up. So when I see the whales here, I'm actually sad because I know how bad the water is here. I'm like, go further away, because the bay is just trashed in this area. It's really hard to see, actually. I go down, blue pieces of foam and styrofoam. I mean, it's a problem, right? So we have to like do better there. The ocean is also suffering from acidification, from pollution, from different types of situations, from buildings and cities, but also from animal agriculture. Big problem. This is a picture of the Gulf of Mexico. The little bright zone down there is where it's called a dead zone. No life can exist from nitrogen and different types of pollutants that end up in the ocean there. So I'm going to switch gears now and talk about what's going on the land. So have you guys heard of the World Wildlife Fund? Got the cute little panda bear. The World Wildlife Fund does an exhaustive study every year. It's called the Living Planet Index. And the Living Planet Index counts 5,000, a little more than 5,000 different types of species: mammals, birds, amphibians, reptiles, and fish. And they count all of these, and they do what's called a Living Planet Index. What they have found is in the last 50 years, since it's 1970 around, a catastrophic decline in biodiverse wildlife on Earth. 70% reduction of wildlife. Crazy numbers, and they're calling this the Holocene extinction. Holocene. This has been reported on every major news network. You guys can look this up. You can see as the population of humans goes up, extinction rates go up. Why is that? Well, there's not a lot of land and there's not a lot of space for all of us. This is a chart from the National Geographic that shows all of the mass extinction events. The Holocene extinction that we're currently in has two unique characteristics to it. The first one being extinction rates are currently 1,000 times greater than ever recorded before in other mass extinction events. The second thing is that this mass extinction is the first and only one being caused by a single species. The bad news is that species is us. So what they did with the Living Planet Index is they also count all wildlife in mammalian body mass. Number of beings that are mammals on the planet. So three different categories: farm animals, cows, pigs, goats, sheep, mammals we raise on farm animals, humans, and then biodiverse wildlife. Who wants to take a guess at what percentage of all mammals on Earth are biodiverse wildlife? Anybody have a guess?
20%, 30%.
4% of mammals on Earth are currently wildlife. All the lions, tigers, and bears, furry critters. Who wants to guess what percentage of mammals on Earth are the human species?
When I put it at 75.
36% of 36% of mammals are humans. Who's good at math here? Any math majors? 60% of mammals on Earth are currently farm animals. So why is this mass extinction event happening? You look at these numbers, you can see some reasons that might be leading to that. So also what's happening on the land, the rainforest, which is where the other 30% of our oxygen comes from, is the trees. The rainforest is being destroyed at a rate of 80,000 acres per day. I got a picture of cattle being raised in the Amazon, but the Amazon, most of it is for crops, for animals. Soybeans, major deforestation going for soybeans. Over 90% of soy crop is fed to cows, pigs, chickens, and even fish eat soybeans today. Excuse me! Hey!